Hey guys, welcome to Telling the Told and Untold. My name is Tshego. Before we go straight into today's case, I'd just like to thank our sponsors for today's video, which is Lovelywholesale. Lovelywholesale is an online store and they sell clothes for both males and females. I got about 6 items from them. I got 4 dresses, this shirt, and this really cute 2-piece. I'll put them all up on the screen right now. It took about 14 days for my clothes to get here. The material is pretty good. Obviously, it's not from South Africa, so the sizes might differ, but all the clothes I got were true to their size. And if you guys are interested, I'll put the link down below, and I'll also put the link down below for all the items I got. And you can use my discount code tpaledi8 for an extra 8% off. For today's case, we're starting out in 4 ways Gauteng. On the 22nd of September 2013, security guards patrolling the parking area at Monte Casino were hit with a really foul smell. They then decided to start searching, trying to see if they could locate the smell, and this is when they came across a brown Nissan Qashqai. After this, they called police officers who ran the license plate and discovered that the car belonged to a 32-year-old man named Dustin Blom, who had been reported missing just the day before. After this, they decided to search the car, trying to see if they could locate where the smell was coming from, like whether it was food that had been left over or something like that, but they couldn't find anything, and after this, they decided to open the boot. Once they opened the boot, they discovered the decomposing body of Dustin Blom. Dustin Blom had a difficult childhood. When he was younger, he and his sister both lost their mother to cancer, and not long after that, they lost their father from brain damage after he was involved in a terrible car accident. After this, the two became very close, and it's said that they still maintained good relationships with their extended families. I couldn't find out whether they went to foster care or they just moved in with their extended families, but I assume it's the latter. In his early 20s, Dustin got into a relationship with Claudine Whitehood, and they then had his first child, a son. The pair soon parted ways, and in 2010, he met Talita van der Veld. The two were very happy and decided to get married, and things were going very well for them. They would travel, they were very family orientated and loved spending time with their friends as well. In 2012, things were going very well for the pair. Dustin was doing well as an IT specialist, and Talita fell pregnant with twins. In March 2013, Talita gave birth to a boy and a girl, and what should have been a very joyous occasion for both their families turned into a tragedy when Talita unfortunately passed away. After this, Dustin just fell into deep depression and grief, so Talita's family just decided to take the twins so that Dustin could just cope and grieve in peace. After this, Dustin returned home without his wife nor his 2 children. Despite having a support system, Dustin began to isolate himself. A life insurance policy for Talita paid out many millions of rands, and thereafter Dustin began to drink heavily and found it difficult to keep up with his job, eventually stopping to work altogether. He spent lots of his time at a restaurant and pub called Dross in Olivedale and began frequenting exotic dance lounges, especially the Lollipop Lounge in Randburg. It didn't take long for Dustin to become a regular at the Lollipop Lounge, and also for the women working there to find out that he was both a widower and he had just inherited a lot of money. Dustin was drowning out his feelings of loss and loneliness with every substance he could get his hands on, and at the time he really didn't have a grip on both his finances as well as health. Dustin was also known to be a very generous man, and it was this generosity as well as grief that led him into the arms of Marishka Robinson. Marishka Robinson is a tall, described as extremely attractive 24-year-old brunette, and at the time that she met Dustin, she was a dancer at the Lollipop Lounge in Randburg, where she performed under the stage name Angelique. She had been working there for about 3 years, and had formed a drug habit. Her relationship with Dustin has never been described as sexual. It's said that Marishka went to Dustin and just, told him all the problems that she had and how she wanted to change her life. And Dustin, being the kind-hearted man that he was, just told her that she could move into his house and just live in a room in the house for free and just try and get her life back on track. Marishka jumped at the chance, and in May 2013, this unlikely pair were living together. Despite Marishka having told Dustin that she wanted to turn her life around and just leave everything in the past, she couldn't leave behind her 32-year-old boyfriend, Jean-Pierre Malone, known as JP. I'll be referring to him in the rest of the video as JP. JP would often go to Dustin's house to go see Marishka, and the two still continued using drugs. On the 25th of May, Dustin was arrested for driving under the influence, and after this, he called Marishka and told her all his banking details, where she could find his cards, his banking pins, and after this, she called JP to tell him all of this. This would then lead to a series of fraudulent transactions by the pair using Dustin's account. It was estimated that Marishka and JP had stolen hundreds of thousands of rands from Dustin's account during the period between May and September of 2013. It would later be revealed that the pair would drug Dustin with GHB. I'll put the full name down below, which is basically just a date rape drug. They would put it in the box of wine that he was drinking so that he would eventually just fall asleep. And after this, they would go into his wallet, take out his bank card, and after this, JP would go to the ATM to go withdraw money, and Marishka would just stay behind and wait for an SMS to come through on Dustin's phone, and after this, she would delete the message before he woke up. The next morning when he woke up, he really wouldn't notice that anything was missing or wrong, because his wallet would be in the same place and there would be no messages. Also, at this time, as I mentioned earlier, Dustin really just didn't have a grip of his finances, so even if money was missing from his account, it's unlikely that he would have noticed, because he really just didn't take care of his finances as much as he should have, or just didn't take note of it. During this time, Dustin dated a few girls from the Lollipop Lounge, but nothing was really serious. On the 3rd of September 2013, Dustin met an escort at the Penthouse, which is an upper-class escort agency. Her name is withheld from public record, but she's known as Tracy. Tracy would later say that Dustin is the first client she would see after hours, and she likes him so much that this is a risk that she was willing to take. Apparently, Tracy and Marishka used to both work at the Lollipop Lounge, and Tracy just really wasn't fond of Marishka. At one point, Dustin tried to invite Tracy back to his house, but once she found out that Marishka was staying with him, she declined the offer. After going on several dates, Tracy decided to go home with Dustin on a couple of occasions, and this really didn't sit well with both Marishka and JP, and this is just because they would find it hard to drug Dustin and steal his card to go withdraw money, because obviously he was always with Tracy and they couldn't drug her as well, and they just didn't like this, they didn't appreciate this, and yeah. It was also around this time that Dustin realized that his life had fallen off track after losing his wife, and he just wanted to fix his life and get things back on track. So he had a friend who was in Bali, a yoga instructor, and he just told Dustin to calm down just so that he could meditate and detox. And Dustin thought this was a really good idea. He had already booked his flights as well as accommodation and had gotten his visa as well. For JP and Marishka, a detox Dustin just wasn't good for them, wasn't good for their plan, wasn't good for getting money. This would also mean that he'd probably realize that some money had been withdrawn from his account. This would also probably mean that he would get his job back, try to get his twins to come move in with him, and he would most likely ask them to move out because he wouldn't want his children living with these two people that occasionally did drugs and probably just weren't a good influence on his children, and things just weren't going the way that JP and Marishka wanted. Dustin Blom was last seen alive in the very early hours of the 18th of September 2013. He was seen leaving the Dross in Olivedale with an unidentified woman. On the 21st of September 2013, Dustin's ex-girlfriend, Claudine Whitehood, reported him missing after no one had seen or heard from him for 3 days. His Nissan Qashqai was also missing. CCTV footage also played a role in solving this case. It was said that Dustin's Nissan Qashqai was seen driving into Monte Casino at approximately 13:55, which is about 5 to 2, on the 18th of September. It then drove to the 4th floor, and on that floor there are no cameras. Police moved so quickly with this case that on the 23rd of September, the day after Dustin's body was found, Marishka Robinson was arrested. There are no exact details as to why she was arrested so quickly, but it is safe to assume that it wasn't hard for police officers to find out who she was, her relationship with Dustin, and just things like that. She appeared in Randburg Magistrates Court on the 25th of September 2013 on charges of murder and robbery. On the 26th of September 2013, JP Malone was located at a Randburg hotel where he had been hiding out. He was found in possession of several fake ID documents. He appeared in court the next day facing the same charges as his girlfriend. At first, the pair seemed like a very united front. They would sit together, they would hold hands, but nearing the start of the trial, it seemed as though the pair had broken up. They would sit separately and they wouldn't even make eye contact. Before the trial began, JP had really long hair that he would tie into a ponytail, but by the time the trial started, he had like a fresh cut and he would dress very neatly like in a suit. Marishka's appearance also changed. At first, she was really like thin because of obviously like all the drugs that she had been using, and being in prison kind of, I'm assuming she just couldn't find the drugs that she was using, so she just started gaining more weight and went back to her normal weight. And it's also said that there were marks at like the lower half of her arm, and these marks weren't track marks, so it's just assumed that they were self-harm marks. The trial eventually started in April 2015, over a year after Dustin's body was discovered. A pathologist testified that Dustin Blom had died on the 18th of September 2013, and his cause of death had been asphyxiation. And although the pathologist could not rule out that strangulation had been the cause of the suffocation, she could not categorically say that it was. Ligature marks were also found around Dustin's neck, and the hyoid bone in his neck was broken, which the pathologist confirmed would have been the result of a significant amount of pressure being applied to the neck. Dustin was also found to have blunt force trauma to his head, which caused hemorrhaging, but it said that this couldn't be enough to kill him. Although both defendants pleaded not guilty to both charges, they did eventually admit to stealing from Dustin, but this would be the only similarity in both of their stories. The following events are according to Marishka. Marishka says that in the early hours of the 18th of September, her and JP were in her room doing drugs when she heard Dustin come home. After this, she went downstairs and found him asleep, and then apparently JP told her that they should like take his card out to steal money from him again, which she was very hesitant about because they hadn't drugged him and there was a possibility that he would wake up. JP then said that like there was no problem, he'd basically just put him into a chokehold that he'd seen on wrestling and that he'd be unconscious. And after this, Marishka just like, she didn't say that like she was against it, but she didn't agree, so she just kind of went to her room and just sat there. She then said she heard like furniture moving, but she didn't go and check it. And then JP apparently left for a long period of time, longer than it usually took for him to withdraw money. When she heard JP come back, she went downstairs, and this is when she found Dustin laying on the floor. She says that JP had returned with another man named Terrence. After this, she saw that Dustin's nose was bleeding, so she went to go check him and kind of just like checked if he was breathing. And this is when JP and the supposed man Terrence just said that Dustin was dead. And this is when she just started panicking and said that they should call the police officers. And JP said that if she calls the police, then he'll leave and she'll have to explain to authorities why there's a dead body in the house. Shortly after this, JP and Terrence left the house but separately, and it said that JP then returned to the house in the afternoon. When he returned, he suggested that they put Dustin's body in his car, to which Marishka agreed to. They then carried his body and put it in the back of his Nissan Qashqai, and Marishka says that she was cleaning up the blood that was like the trail of blood leading up to it, and then says that she put the towels in a black plastic bag and then threw across the street from Dustin's house. Marishka then says that on the evening of the 18th of September, they then drove to Monte Casino where they withdrew money, and then they went gambling the night away. In the morning, they went to Dion Wyatt to buy a few electrical items, and after this, Marishka claims that JP dropped her off at the Randburg Inn and then left again. She says that he joined her later in the day and told her that he had left Dustin's vehicle at Monte Casino. In JP's version of events, he points the finger at Marishka. He says that in the early hours of the 18th of September, they heard Dustin come home, and Marishka suggested that they give him a sleeping pill so that they could steal his car to go withdraw money. After this, Marishka gave Dustin a sleeping pill and then went back to JP when Dustin had fallen asleep. JP says that he took the card and went to go withdraw money, but once he got there, he realized that he had gotten the wrong pin, so he returned home. He says that he never saw Dustin because he went through the side door, then went up to Marishka's room. He then said that he left the house for the rest of the day and only returned in the evening of the 18th of September to go fetch Marishka. She told him that Dustin told them to go withdraw money so that they could go grocery shopping, and afterwards they went to Olivedale Shopping Center and withdrew large amounts of money. Around midnight, they went to Monte Casino where they drew more money and gambled. CCTV footage at Monte Casino shows the couple happily, talking to cashiers, pinching each other's bums, and they don't seem like they just killed a man. They seem very happy. According to JP, Marishka hadn't told him about Dustin's death for about 24 hours. When they returned home on the 19th of September, he saw Dustin's body lying in a pool of blood on the floor, and he said that he kind of felt bad and he felt responsible because Marishka told him that Dustin had basically overdosed from GHB, and JP just felt like he was responsible because he's the one that gave Marishka the drugs. So he then says that he put Dustin's body in the boot of his car, then drove it to Monte Casino, but he says that he was not involved in the actual murder or strangling Dustin. A printout of about 1,800 pages of Marishka and JP's text messages kind of indicates that Dustin's murder was premeditated. They also spoke about how Dustin was going to Bali and just basically how it's not a good thing for them. A taxi driver who had driven both JP and Marishka between the 18th and the 20th of September also testified in court. He says that in the morning of the 18th of September, Marishka called him and just told him that he had to go pick up Dustin from the Randburg Inn and just drive him around. The taxi driver says that he picked up Dustin and on their way, picked up JP, and on their way to Dustin's house, they stopped at a nearby engine where they picked up another man. He says that he didn't get the name of this other man. After this, JP told the taxi driver to go stop at a nearby ATM, and once they stopped there, JP gave this random man an ATM card, and after a few minutes, the man came back and gave the card to JP. And after this, JP got out the car, went to the ATM, and then he too returned after a couple of minutes and just said something along the lines of, "It's the wrong pin." After this, the taxi driver took them to Dustin's house and dropped them off at around 10 a.m. This also goes hand in hand with what Marishka says, but also with what JP says. Marishka in terms of like JP just coming back with a random man named Terrence, but also JP when he says that he came back home because the pin was incorrect. One of the other witnesses that testified in court was the escort that Dustin had been seeing, Tracy, which I mentioned earlier in the video. And Tracy says that on the 17th of September, the day before Dustin was murdered, she went to Dustin's house, but Dustin wasn't there. And after this, Marishka just invited her inside the house and told her to go to her room. And Tracy felt like it was rude to decline the offer. She says when they were in the room, Marishka just told her something along the lines of Dustin telling her that she should just be able to make 10,000 rand and that he would help her like buy a car. And Marishka just said something like, it's not that hard to make 10,000 rand. After this, JP came into the room and Tracy says this was the first time that she ever met JP. And after this, Marishka said something along the lines of like, just like take out the black bag, like the goodie bag. And this is when JP went to the bag and pulled out like a plastic bag filled of GHB. I forgot the other drugs, but I'll put them here. And Tracy just remembers saying that like that's a lot of drugs for you guys to have just the two of you. And both of them were just like, no, it's a celebration. We'll have something to celebrate soon. There were 4 men who were charged with fraud and theft, and it emerged that these men were associates of JP Malon's and he had given them Dustin's credit cards to use. I couldn't find any more information about these other men, like whether they were charged with the crime or not, or what happened with them, or whether one of these 4 men were Terrence. In the pre-sentencing for JP and Marishka, JP's probation officer took the stand and she basically just said that JP had confessed to her and told her that, you know, he's the one that had killed Dustin. He says that on that night they were trying to take his bank card and then Dustin woke up and he didn't know what to do, so he had to kill him. On the 18th of August 2015, JP Malone asked to address the court, and then he told everyone present that he was the one to have killed Dustin Blom. Marishka Robinson was sentenced to 29 years, 10 years for being an accessory to murder after the fact, and 19 years for the cumulative charges of fraud and robbery with aggravating circumstances. JP Malone received a life sentence as well as an additional 10 years for obstruction of justice, 7 years for 4 counts of fraud, 15 years for robbery with aggravating circumstances, and 18 months each for 5 counts of identity theft. And that is it for today's case. If you guys have any comments, please leave them down below. And don't forget to check out Lovely Wholesale and use my discount code tpaledi8 for an extra 8% off. Bye!